This episode of the Nerf Herder Council is brought to you by Audible. Visit audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download.
Hi, this is Joseph Williams, son of John Williams, and you are watching the Nerf Herder Council.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking Nerf herder!
You can't use that word! Only we can use that word!
You're tuned in to the Nerf Herder Council, your source for Star Wars opinion, conversation, and debate. Featuring your hosts, JT.
Stormtrooper armor deflects everything except Orback hooves. They're like a horse version of Thomas the Tank Engine.
AJ.
Yeah, Rebels is a lot like our show, where we think we have a good idea and then it just fails in execution.
On this episode of the Nerf Herder Council, it's Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Is it a sophomore slump or a bridge to greater stories ahead? Grab your Floo powder and your Nimbus 2000. It's time to go back to Hogwarts.
This is the Nerf Herder Council.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. I am your host, JT. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and we are also live on the Facebook page and YouTube channel of the Virtual Cantina Network. As always, guys, the views of the Nerf Herder Council don't necessarily reflect those of the Virtual Cantina Network, and there could be some bad language in our show, so if you are not into that, please turn this episode off immediately. We are brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. If you would like to get some customizable Nerf Herder Council swag, just go to shop.nerfherdercouncil.com. If you would like to get some awesome Virtual Cantina Network gear, just go to tpublic.com/user/virtual-cantina. And guys, if you are watching on YouTube, if you have not done so already, please click the like button, the subscribe button, and that notification bell so that you are notified every time we go live. Without further ado, let me bring on my best friend and my co-host. He, of course, is AJ. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on tonight, brother? How you doing?
I am doing good. I am a little bit tired. I tried some new culinary stuff or nutritional stuff this week, and it's been an abject failure, as we discussed off. Other than that, I'll catch up. I'll catch up eventually. What the hell? So, it is what it is. But I'm ready to talk some Harry Potter, dude. So, I reread the book recently. I've seen the movie a ton of times. So, this will be a good one, dude. I as I said, the last time we talked, about Sorcerer's Stone. Couldn't think of it there for a second. I totally went down the Harry Potter rabbit hole. And I just had a great time with it. So it's a good excuse for me to reread the book, watch the movie, kind of, do some research on it. So just, excited to hang out and kind of nerd out on this stuff. So first and foremost, got to shout out Chastity Crawley. Always great to see her. And she was in here before the show started, just chomping at the bit to talk some Harry Potter. So at some point we should get her on because that's her jam. So
yeah.
She says, here and ready to talk Harry Potter. She says, the Harry Potter rabbit hole welcomes you. Nice.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what we're doing here tonight. She should just be hosting the show for us,
Yeah. All right, Chastity, I'm sending you the link. You can just filibuster for an hour and a half on Harry Potter. Luke has spoken, checking in, says, hello there. Good to see you, Luke. Always good to hang out with you. Discuss Metal Joe, our good friend Joseph Wren, says, be afraid. Be very afraid. Nice. All right. Well, let's jump right into it.
Okay. Simple enough.
Although actually, since I just, speaking of filibustering, I just basically did that for the first 4 minutes. Do you have anything you'd like to discuss before we get into our, before we get into our topic? Anything you need to bring to the table?
Nothing in particular other than to say that I'm really excited to talk about this tonight because you and I were discussing before we went on camera that, as you said, you've seen the movie a bunch of times. I've seen the movie a bunch of times, but in terms of show prep for this particular episode, we both got through the book, but the movie is not so fresh in our heads. So I think we're going to be talking more book stuff than movie stuff tonight, which is different for us. So it's weird that we discuss a book more than a movie on any sort of a topic. So let's see how our impressions differ, because I think you know the movie a little bit better than I do, but the book is very fresh in my mind. So I think it'll be interesting to see like where those opinions differ based on which one that we're more familiar with. Sure.
Well, it's a nerd podcast, and it doesn't get any nerdier than reading books. So, so there we go, man.
I mean, I did play Settlers of Catan last week for the first time. So I think my nerd cred is actually going up.
Okay. I was playing Star Wars Outlaws before we jumped on. So there we go. I'm currently sneaking around an Imperial base. So,
So who's pissed off at you so far? I know, totally not Harry Potter. Sorry, guys.
I have a good relationship with the Pikes right now. And I'm currently having to make a decision whether or not to screw the Pikes or screw Crimson Dawn. I'm on a mission for Crimson Dawn. It's going to screw the Pikes, but I have an option to do either or. So I have to. I'll probably get like a really good reputation with the Pikes, and my reputation with Crimson Dawn will go to crap. So this is one of those like choose your own adventure moments for me.
After seeing the last season of Game of Thrones, I don't think I ever want to cross Emilia Clarke.
I would cross paths with her. Cross. Sorry. My bad. Sorry. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I haven't gotten quite that far yet. I just snuck past a couple of stormtroopers, past some surveillance cameras. And then I paused to jump on here. So, but I think you do have something to talk about because you told me earlier in the week that we have a brand new Patreon subscriber.
Yes, thank you. I had not had that queued up ready to go. I was going to mention that in our outro because we never actually, talk about our Patreon. So I was what, where's he going with this? I don't know.
I was trying to be responsible and proactive and ended up
yeah. No, we did miss this though. Last month, actually, I'm very good at checking notifications on Patreon. We do have a new Patreon subscriber. So shout out to Linda Mullany. Thanks for joining, at the free tier, which is just fine. As I said, like with our Patreon, you don't have to pay any money, but that is where we're most active. If we're going to like do any sort of unreleased or unscheduled content, we've already got a film commentary up there for The Phantom Menace. And we got to book some more of those, dude. Get some more of those Star Wars commentaries going. But yeah, join us for free at patreon.com/NHC podcast. And we'll keep you up to date on everything that's going on there, including the live streams of this show. The audio comes out there 2 days early if you're a paid member at $1 or $3. And like I said, other weird stuff that we'll get going on there just because Patreon is very creator friendly, whereas YouTube, not so much at times. So there you go.
There we go. All right. So welcome Patreon subscribers. There we go. And all right, without further ado, as I said in the little description, let's jump into the wizarding world and let's hit Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. We of course are on book number 2. Mm-hmm. And if you are why is my nose itching? Good Lord, I look like a cokehead over here. Anyway, yeah, if you are a Harry Potter fan, or if you just started the series and have not gotten to book 2, meaning, when I said, you know what, I'm flubbing all over this. Fuck this shit. If you haven't gotten to book 2 yet, and there's going to be spoilers. So fuck, there we go. Man, oh man.
Let me just do a quick Google and find out, when did Chamber of Secrets actually get published?
I just wanted to warn people, because what I was trying to say is, if you're a fan or someone who just got into it, I meant if you're a fan, someone who just got into it, whatever, then, there will be spoilers. That was
1998 in the UK and 99 in the US, and the movie came out in 2002. I think we're good.
Well, look, I just wanted to warn people, because maybe they're tuned in. They're like, oh crap, I was going to read that. I don't want to know. So, Yeah, so there will be spoilers. And I don't, as AJ just pointed out, I don't think, something that's been out for 25 years,
Yeah.
I don't think there's too much to spoil. But anyway, all right. So in my research,
I'm just laughing and watching Chastity just taking over the YouTube chat.
That's fine. That's fine. This is her jam, man. So in my research, I've kind of stumbled across a lot of people who this is mostly, from what I've seen, fans' least favorite entry in the series. So I don't know if you've dug into it at all, but that's always been kind of interesting to me because, everyone's got to have a least favorite. And I have, found that this is the one. This is the Attack of the Clones of the Harry Potter series, as it were. So what do you think about this one? Right off the rip, I mean, do you think it's the weakest in the series for what you know?
I'll admit that as a series overall, I'm obviously freshest on the first and the second books and movies because we've covered them for the show now. But overall, this is not my least favorite. I know this is a controversial opinion, but I think Prisoner of Azkaban might be my least favorite.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's either Prisoner of Azkaban or Half-Blood Prince. I'm not sure which.
I haven't really thought about it. I would have to say that honestly, the first half of Deathly Hallows is kind of Lord of the Rings-ish with them just traipsing around looking for shit. So that one that was a little bit slow for me. The fifth and sixth books kind of are one and the same to me. It's almost like one long story split into two. That's the way it's always felt to me. Anyway, I would say that this one is, for me, I would say it's probably the weakest entry. But I will say that when I first went through the series, I was like, okay, that second one, it's a clear last place entry. But as I've reread the book and watched the movie a couple more times, I'm actually like, it's getting better with time, I think. So it is kind of, it does have a little bit of that whodunit aspect to it. So to compare it to Attack of the Clones is a little bit apropos. So, there's definitely a mystery going on. I think the way that they tie the whole story together, the way everything comes together in the end is really, really cool. So I do like that. I think the writing's very good. But yeah, I think there's many others I would choose ahead of this one if I was going to, dig into it.
Yeah. It's not the worst, but I wouldn't put it near the top either. It's definitely a middle of the pack kind of thing. But I think a lot of what this one does for me is that it does a lot of world building. It sets up a lot of stuff that pays off later. So it's kind of like the MCU equivalent of when they decided to go with the Infinity Stones. Like they were dabbling around, just kind of dropping stuff. And then when they finally decided, oh, wait, we can make a cohesive story out of this. That's what this feels like. This feels like they took, she had the framework when she wrote the first book and obviously the overarching storyline, but it feels like in this one, she really was like, okay, I'm going to put some stuff here that's going to pay off later. It doesn't all have to tie into this particular story.
Sure.
And yeah, I think that's really cool. But of course you don't get that unless you know the whole saga. So how well those things pay off on their own, that could be frustrating to have a whole bunch of stuff be like, well, wait a minute, you introduce this thing and it goes nowhere in the story.
Yeah.
So there's that trade-off. And Star Wars has this problem all the time too. It's a popular thing with every franchise, right? You sow some seeds for the future, but if you just look, you have to be very careful not to compromise the story you're telling for the seeds you're laying for the future,
Yeah, that makes sense. Cam McLeish, good to see you, man. He says, correct, John. This is like Attack of the Clones. This is the episode 2 of the Potter saga. Chastity says, AJ, Prisoner of Azkaban is a common dislike. And Cam McLeish says, meanwhile, Half-Blood Prince as a movie is terrible. That, I don't know, man. I think as a movie, I've got more problems with Order of the Phoenix, Kale, to be honest with you. Lucas Spoken's with you though. He says, "Yep, Half-Blood Prince is my least favorite movie as well." Discuss Metal Joe's throwing his hat in the ring. He says, "Really? Prisoner of Azkaban is one of my favorite stories in the series." Yeah. So I've seen a lot of love for Prisoner of Azkaban, but this one seems to not be up there. I like I say, it's almost always at the bottom from what I've seen, and I don't know why that is, because I'm with you. It's almost like, I mean, I guess I can understand if you're rating it against some of the other stories, but I've seen some people say that this one borderline sucks, and I completely disagree with. I think it's a good follow up. I think it's like the first book on steroids a little bit, but just kind of different. And again, I think the first book was so charming because until you really get to the end and whatnot, there wasn't a ton of stakes. You're just kind of like, bouncing around the, Harry Potter's world as he's like discovering things for the first time. So you're kind of like along for the ride with him. So it's cool. It's fun. It's upbeat. And this one, it's established and whatnot. And then, you do have all of a sudden, you get the first element of darkness in the story, really, because, when he first hears the basilisk, it's like, kill, blood, like, I want to kill you, I want to rip your face off and eat your blood and shit, like, so it kind of goes there immediately, and you're like, yee, okay.
Yeah, these stories don't have a lot of nuance sometimes, like even Draco in this one, he's talking about, he's just throwing around mudblood, which is basically an N-bomb for the wizarding world.
It really is.
And first off, no one's really like checking him on it. Like, you'd think some grown-ups would be like, oh, no, we do not tolerate that kind of language around here.
Yeah.
But then also he's like, yep, someone's probably going to die this time. I really hope it's Hermione. Like, whoa, dude, you're wishing death on another student. And again, no one's checking him on this. Snape is just like, it's cool, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent point, actually, that you bring up. I think that's a main difference between the movie and the book. It's the book is much more involved. It's more serious. I don't think that the movie kind of hits on those things enough. The whole mudblood thing is a very big part of this. In the novel, and in the movie, it's like, he's just killing, Muggle-born students or whatever, but it's really kind of hammered home in the novel, and I don't think that's, in the movie enough.
Yeah, that's one thing that I will say that is a big demerit for me on the movie is, I get these are child actors, so you can't expect Oscar-winning performances or anything, but like you said, the book is dark. The things going on are dark, like they're using basically racial slurs of a sort and talking about like killing students and whatnot. And they don't act like Ron, Hermione, and Harry. All three of those actors, they don't deliver those lines with any sort of emphasis whatsoever. The performances are just very neutral, very underacted for what they're saying. And I'm like, okay. I guess it's one of those. Okay, to me, it's like the Hunger Games. This movie reminds me of the Hunger Games in that, having read the book, I can fill in the gaps. If I just take the movie on its own, there's a lot of nonsense here. It's almost like required background research to read the book. Otherwise, this movie kind of falls apart.
Yeah,
like a collection of scenes rather than a cohesive narrative.
I think that's why my opinion of it has kind of changed as I've gotten more into the Harry Potter thing, because, I think you just nailed it. Like, the book is much more involved. There's more there. There's more meat on the bone, to use that term, more cohesive. Whereas the movie leaves some things out that are somewhat necessary to the, if nothing else, to the atmosphere of the story itself. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. I think that's very, very important. One of the major changes, in the beginning, when Harry's using the Flu Network for the first time, and he says diagonally. It sounds like he sounds diagonally instead of Diagon Alley. And he ends up in Borgin and Burke's, in that closet. And, he goes and hides in the closet and whatnot. And then in the book, Lucius and Draco Malfoy come in trying to get rid of some dark artifacts because they know that, the Ministry of Magic's cracking down on that stuff. So kind of in the first book, you knew that Draco was a slime ball, but now you're seeing, okay, well, his dad is also a piece of crap and they're into some dark shit. And in the movie, they don't show that. The first time we see Lucius Malfoy is in the bookstore, and he's just kind of being just like a snobbish, rich prick, really. But it doesn't. Yeah. So I think that's something that kind of takes away a little bit from the narrative, because that's something that it adds something to Draco's character in the novel that you don't really get until later in the series of movies because they pulled that scene out from the movie,
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of that too, where like you said, there's character development that's lacking in the movie. And I get, you've got to be very judicious. The books get longer as they go, and the runtime of the movies doesn't. They finally had to concede to make a 2-parter of Deathly Hallows, but yeah, I mean, as the books go on, you've got to cut more and more because there's only, 2.5 hours of runtime or whatever the movies end up being. So I get that, but I feel like the choices made of what to leave in and what to cut out might not have been the best.
Yeah.
Especially if I mean, I don't know what the story was with the studio, but I would imagine that once they started on these and they saw how successful the first one was, they had to kind of bank on the fact that they were going to get through probably the entire series, especially at the rate at which they came out. So you'd want to leave in as much of that character development as possible. Like we were talking, these side stories where you get a little plot thread here, but it doesn't matter until books later,
Yeah.
Which would seem like an easy cut if you're trying to cut for runtime, but knowing that you have to have that introduction in order to pay it off later, you still kind of need to have that character development in there, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. The one character development, idea that I always come back to when thinking about novel versus book, the one that always drives me the most crazy, but it's a glaringly obvious one, but I think it's a good illustration as to why certain things you need to keep them as they are. I always fall back on the Dark Tower movie where they made, the gunslinger a person of color, because that completely takes away part of another character. One of the, on the quest that Roland the Gunslinger is going on, Roland Deschain, there's 4 characters. There's him, there's Eddie, there's the little Billy Bumbler, just consider him a dog, Oi, and then there's Susanna. And Susanna is a person of color, and that comes into play, here and there in the story. And so as soon as you make the main character a person of color, you take that away from that other character. Like, why are you doing that? You basically just ripped, you flipped it on its ear. If you're going to continue making these movies, like, why are you doing that? And while this choice to not show Draco and Lucius in Borgin and Burke's doesn't flip anything on its ear, I to your point, it's something that was altered from the book that I think really needed to be in there. So I think
you just hit on a great thing though. I think it should be Borgin and Borks, and then the Muppets can take it over, and the Swedish Chef can be in Nocturne Alley.
Right.
Welcome to Borgin and Bork.
Right. Oh my God, that's awesome. All right, so Joseph Wren is on your side. He says, I do think AJ nailed it. This story sets up a lot that pays off later. Who is Voldemort? What a Horcrux can be later. How many mysteries can be in the school itself, and the staff are not all seeing. Oh, yes, and Draco is a D-bag. Chastity says, Draco is part of one of the oldest wizarding families, and some people, cough Slytherins, cough Snape, cough, turn a blind eye to him being a little turd. Plus, he comes from an abusive home. So, She continues. She says, plus he comes from an abusive home. Look at how Lucius treats him. Narcissa is sort of browbeaten by Lucius as well. So not excusing Draco, but sort of understandable. Yeah. I mean, it's, I think you need that in there. So, Billy Judd checking in says, hi guys. Rick Mayall. Thanks for tuning in, by the way, man. Appreciate you. Says Rick Mayall was going to play Peeves the Poltergeist. No shit. That's kind of cool. He says
Peeves is a huge missing character in this stuff, I think.
Yes. Okay, we'll get to that in a quick second. Billy says Draco and Lucius were in Borgans in a deleted scene. I'm glad you mentioned that, Billy, because I'm usually like extra bonus feature guy. I do not have the physical copies of the movies, so I don't have any of the deleted scenes. So I'll have to look those up on YouTube. So, Joseph Wren. Could you imagine how many times the Swedish chef would accidentally cast spells because of his rambling? That's awesome.
He would never get anywhere on the Flu Network. I mean, it's all predicated on speaking clearly. This guy would be like, here to go to Dargan Alley.
So Billy also says, and Penelope Clearwater wasn't petrified in the book. Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Billy, because I was actually just going to say that to AJ. He's talking about Peeves being kind of like a big omission. Peeves was pretty much omitted from the movies. It wasn't nearly as prevalent. Penelope Clearwater is another character that basically isn't in the movie. And I think those are two omissions that I think were okay, though, because Penelope Clearwater really was just, hey, Percy has a girlfriend. Ooh, it's just, an excuse for, the twins to just rip on him. And Peeves really just kind of runs around effing with stuff. And it's only like, you can count him on, the fingers of one hand, how many times throughout the 7 books he actually does something that is, affects the plot heavily. So I don't think that was a bad omission. So,
he's definitely like a C story, his rivalry with Filch.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Billy corrected himself, and I should have corrected myself as well, Billy. He says she was petrified. He said, I meant she was petrified in the book, but not in the film. Yeah. In the book, it was her and Hermione at the same time. Wasn't that how it worked? Yeah. At the same time. Mm-hmm. And then in the movie, it was only Hermione. So, but back to what we were talking about Draco and Lucius. I think that's kind of important, to have that character building there in Bergen and Borks, as we're calling it. So,
and I was kind of surprised actually, J.K. Rowling has come under so much fire for her views and, homophobia and stuff like that. For her to have characters like Draco, to Chastity's point, clearly a victim of, emotional abuse, at least. There's some pretty progressive views in here. For her to come out later and be very regressive in her points of view, I thought it was odd and in stark contrast to the writing.
Well, maybe she's writing her views into stuff. Maybe there's certain things where, she, doesn't like certain things. And so she kind of like speaks through Draco and Lucius and stuff like that. Who knows? Maybe that's her, writing her dickhead views into a character just to kind of get it out. Right? Like, who knows? I mean, people have done that kind of thing before. So, but yeah, so I was surprised they left that out. And then there was a couple other, like I said, the Hermione thing was, Hermione and Penelope Clearwater. I didn't think that was a big deal to leave Penelope out, with her not getting petrified as well. The Death Day party was pretty much not really there, which in the movie, which doesn't matter, that because, I mean, who cares? Let's learn about ghosts. Like, is that really important over the course of the actual narrative? Not really. So I mean, it works great in the book, but I don't think it's necessary. So that's good. I mean, that's the one thing I really think in a lot of the movies, if not all of them, I don't know about you, but like, I can't really count very many things where I was like, okay, they really should have put that in and they didn't. I can think of a couple huge glaring ones that I don't like, but I'll save those, I will save those for when we get to those books, but we're not there yet.
Okay.
So, yeah.
This is really nitpicky, but one of those head scratching things you were talking about, how like in The Gunslinger, they changed the color of the main character. I thought it was weird. It's one of those pointless changes. The password to Dumbledore's office is different in the book and the movie. And I'm like, why change
Really?
it? It's lemon drop in the book, and it's something else like lemon tart or some other dessert in the movie. I was just watching that earlier. I'm like, that has no consequence whatsoever. Like, why even bother changing it? Because there's parts at which they are very deliberate in quoting the dialogue from the book. So they try to stick to it in certain parts, like to the letter. And in this one, they're like, you know what? We're just gonna make him say McGonagall say a different word.
Right?
Yeah. Kale's got it. Lemon sherbet. It's lemon sherbet in the movie, and it's lemon drop in the book.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Like, why?
Okay, so Chastity and Billy Judd are saying the Death Day party. Chastity says the Death Day party does build on the relationship between the trio and the ghosts. See, I don't think that matters though. I really don't. Like, I mean, I guess it builds on the relationship with Ron, Hermione, and Harry, but I mean, do we need that really in the movies? I mean, it's interesting. It fleshes out, ghosts in the Harry Potter universe in the novel, but if it's missing in the movie, does it matter? And I know, they go, Billy Judd's talking about, they go into Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, for the first time, and that's where we meet her as well. But you could do that anyway. I mean, they did it in the movie. They ended up in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. It's like, okay, it's the big damn deal. So it's, I don't know. I didn't just John Phillips, good to see you. He says, at least the password wasn't cockroach cluster. Oh my gosh.
They should have just gone with spotted dick.
Yeah. Right. Just horribly British stuff.
Look, it's bread pudding, everybody. Okay. This is stateside people,
I know. Is that what that stuff is? Bread pudding?
Yep.
I never knew that, and it's probably because if you're saying, hey, would you like to try some spotted dick? I'm like, no, I don't.
I would go to the doctor for that, actually.
Exactly. Although I do call our new dog Wayne the British Bulldog because he's an American Bulldog, and his wiener is spotted. Like he's got like he's got like spots.
There's
on
the
him.
Nerf Herder Council people tune in for. All right.
So there we go. So yeah, I call him Davy Boy Smith. So but yeah, I just don't think the Death Day party was necessary. So I'm kind of glad they cut that out.
Again, to Chastity's point, like, yeah, these things do have certain relevance, but if you've only got 2.5 hours, you're gonna have to cut some stuff. And yeah, that's an easy one to cut. You can make those. It's like one of the ghosts was the professor in the book who explained the myth of the Chamber of Secrets, for example. It was the guy who teaches the history of magic. And they just gave all that to McGonagall instead in the movie, which makes perfect sense in that it just saves time from having to introduce another class, another teacher, and just streamlines it all down nicely, and you get the same information out. So it's economical.
Yeah. I think they do a really good job in the Harry Potter films of doing that. Like, you still get the same information, and is it as fulfilling or enriching as it is in the novel? No. But you're going to have that a lot of time. I mean, every time you're going to have better world building in the book than you will the movie. But I think a lot of movies really drop the ball on stuff like that. Whereas I think the Harry Potter movies don't, I think they do a good job of what they change and how they present it. I mean, I think it still works. And I think the popularity of the movie speaks to it, and especially the fact that in all the stuff that I read and try and educate myself on in terms of this series, I don't see almost anyone saying, well, the movies suck and the books are great. So
Right.
yeah, I don't see that. Whereas with other stuff, you know, I mean, Lord of the Rings is a perfect example. You know, our older brother, he likes the movies, but he's a huge fan of the books, and he's like, oh, these suck compared to the books. You know, and I've heard that from a lot of people. Whereas with these, I don't hear that. So, you know.
Well, I think that's because these are children's books, so it's a little easier to get all this stuff on screen than it is in something like Lord of the Rings, which has many more layers and just tons of stuff in there. But that's why you had the director's editions that were almost double the runtime. I feel like, especially as this series goes on, I feel like the movies, to our point about having to cut stuff out for runtime, those really would have benefited from some sort of extended edition, you know?
I was going to ask you about that. That was going to be a question. Like, I'm glad you brought that up. I completely agree with you on that. I just think that, you know, even though we don't need all of this stuff as we've been talking about, to have it there would be great. You know, and I think, you know, the Lord of the Rings comparison is very appropriate here, because the movies are already long, and, you know, did we need 45 more minutes or an hour more of each of those movies? No. But does it add more of the lore and kind of like flesh things out a little better and bring it closer to the novel? Yeah. So why not go for it?
Does it get Viggo Mortensen singing? Yeah.
I completely forgot about that. It's been a long time since I watched those. Maybe that's a rewatch we got to do.
Well, I mean, this is already a lot of show prep between having to like go through the book and then watch the movie. So if we're going to be getting into like 4.5 hour films and then having to read 600 or 700 page books as well.
No, we're not doing that. We're watching the movies. No, we're watching the movies. That is not a book read, because I can't get through those damn things.
I can't either. Oh my God. That's one thing that I will say for this book and every other Harry Potter book in the series, even as they get longer towards the end, they move.
Yeah.
And some books just don't. Well, I mean, I really thought, like, especially as I was looking at, like, sorry guys, I don't really read books anymore. I just listen to them. audibletrial.com/NHC. Looking at the runtime of the audiobooks, and as they, you know, obviously extend throughout, even those, I was looking at them, like, especially when you get on to like 5, 6, and 7 and going like, oh man, this is an investment at this point. They're getting up to like 12 to 15 hours or more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, geez, especially Deathly Hallows. I think the clock's in around like 19 or something. It's like over twice as long as this book. But I never got bored. They keep moving.
Yeah.
Much better than other books of the similar length. So I give her credit for writing good stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, and I think it's something that this book does really well, is it's one cohesive story, but she kind of breaks it into like little chunks. Like each chapter is its own little thing. And it, you know, they all are glued together, but it's like you're kind of bopping around to different kind of vibes. You know, in this one, you know, you've got, you know, like I said, you've got the Death Day party and everything, and then, you know, he hears the basilisk for the first time, like, what the hell? And then you've got the more light moments with like Quidditch matches and stuff like that. And, you know, I think they do a really good job of splitting those things up. So, you know, and again, in this one, because it is kind of a whodunit, you've got some really interesting stuff going on. You know, and, you know, Gilderoy Lockhart is like a cool new character, and you can tell he's just a complete fool from basically the outset. And you've got that going on the whole time when you're like, okay, when is this going to blow up in this guy's face? So it's got a lot of really interesting elements that keep it moving. So I think that's a very astute point on your part. You know, because I would agree with that. Like I said, I think the only time it really slowed down for me was, again, the first half of Deathly Hallows, and that's just, you know, because it was them, you know, traipsing through fields and crap looking for Horcruxes and not finding anything. It was like, good Lord. And, you know, a spoiler alert for when we get there, way down the road. But when I look back at that, I don't think there's any other way to do it. Because if you had that speed of everything, all of a sudden the Horcruxes kind of lose their importance. It's like, oh, we could find these goddamn things. Like, oh, right. He's walking across the street, he trips on something. Like, oh shit, look, it's a Horcrux. I'll be damned. You know?
Right. It's the video game. In video games, it would be called a fetch quest.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to have at least some drama in there.
Yeah.
This is a question more for Chastity to be one of those continuity and lore junkies. So you said blowing up in your face, and it just triggered this. Ron breaks his wand, right?
Yes.
And it's made a very big deal about like the wand selection process, and the wand chooses the wizard and so on and so forth with Ollivanders. So they don't really bring that up in this book. They're just like, it's broken, and they're like, oh, you're going to have to go get another one. Like they don't make a big deal out of the fact that this thing is broken or that it's still usable, but doesn't really work right. It just seems like a little inconsistent with the way, Sorcerer's Stone set it up, and the way that definitely in Deathly Hallows, for example, it pays off with using someone else's wand and being diminished and stuff. So I'm curious from Chastity's point of view to see like how Ron's issues with his wand in this one kind of tie into that.
Well, we wait for her to answer. I think I know it's a hard one to answer, honestly, because it becomes a major issue, at the end of the story, when, that's basically how they get out of, the whole thing with Lockhart down in the Chamber of Secrets. So, which again, now, I mean, but to me, that's one of those awesome writing things, because you figure Ron broke his wand, and it's basically like this comedic thing. He tries to curse Malfoy with the slug curse, and he ends up, hitting himself. And you basically just kind of look at it. It was, it was like humor. He kept screwing up spells and everything. Ha ha ha. Well, then when they're down in the Chamber of Secrets, it's like, okay, well, Lockhart got the upper hand on him. How the hell are they going to come up with this? And he ends up doing a memory charm that reverses back on him. And you're like, oh, I guess that was important after all. Mm-hmm. And, yeah. And Kale said it right there. He says they need the wand to be broken. Otherwise, Lockhart ends them. And Chastity, I can't believe we didn't think about this. I'm so glad we have you here for this. This is going to be obvious, AJ. Ron's wand in book 1 is mentioned that it was a hand-me-down. It wasn't even his, or ever his, excuse me. When it broke and he had to get a new one, he was finally able to have his own wand. See, that's the kind of writing stuff. Yeah, that's the kind of writing that I'm talking about that is like really intelligent in these things.
Who was it handed down from, since you know all the lore there? One doesn't seem like the sort of thing that a wizard would give up. Like, I haven't heard of any other wizard, with the exception of Dumbledore, once he gets the Elder Wand. Yeah. Outside of that, I think you get a wand and you just stick with it, right?
Yeah.
We're making her do research now. She says, hang on, I'll get it.
Nice. Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And again, the Lockhart character I thought was really cool. It's, the guy's a total doofus, and, he comes in, and it's, I thought it was a really interesting way to kind of move the plot along in certain points, instead of just, I mean, it's easy enough and it's cool enough to rely on the same old characters, but I thought it was an interesting choice to, kind of have him there to do that. When he sets up the dueling club, and, Snape basically owns him. And then, it sets up the duel between Malfoy and Harry Potter, and he ends up speaking parcel tongue when he did that, snake charm thing, creates a, serpent. So, Lockhart was kind of there to, be the instigator of that. And, when he's, there, and he's trying to flee the scene, when they're like, oh, look at that. Everything. Well, shit, get down there into the Chamber of Secrets. Go. And then, nope, can't do that. Like, he gets down there, and then, he basically, you're like, oh my God, is he going to memory charm the kids? How are they going to get out of this? And he's down there for that. There's a bunch of spots in the book where he's kind of like comedic effect, but also kind of moving things along. So I thought that was a really cool character. So, all right. So Chastity said it was Charlie's wand. I wasn't sure if it was Charlie's or Bill's. I knew it was one of the two.
Okay. And she's quoting page numbers.
Nice.
No, the other nice thing about that they introduced was this idea of, especially in the book, they didn't really harp on it in the movie quite so much, but they definitely pointed out in the book One of those, again, seemingly extraneous details, like from Wayne's World, that security guard had, well, I forget what the quote is, but like having too much information. But they talked about in the book, they're like, oh, what a get. We got Gilderoy Lockhart to be our Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Like, they must have had a ton of applicants. And then they're like, actually, no, that's kind of a revolving door. We just can't keep anybody in that job for some reason.
Yeah.
Which seems like a throwaway, but later on, it's because Voldemort has basically been stacking the deck to make sure that entire classes of wizards come out of Hogwarts with no defense against the dark art.
Right.
Like, it seems like a nothing statement in this, but then later on it comes into play when the war happens. You're like, yeah, these kids can't fight because they have not had good teachers.
Yep. Yeah, this book started to really set up for me when, the very first time I read it, it really set up for me kind of this idea of, okay, how much of this has she written in advance? Was this a case of, the sequel trilogy in Star Wars where they just kind of made it up as they went? Or was this a case of the original trilogy where it's one story chopped into pieces? Because, the Voldemort thing is obvious. He's the big bad guy. So, okay. Like, you know what you're getting there. Like, you can write the bad guy. You can do whatever you want. But, some of the stuff that comes back later, Joseph Wren mentioned it earlier, the whole Horcrux thing, that's in here. Was that something that she had already come up with? Or was that this is how she got out of this book? Like, oh, he's going to stab it with a basilisk fang. And then later I went, oh, maybe I'll do that. Things like that. There's just a lot of things that kind of start, that start here that weave throughout the rest of the book so seamlessly that it kind of seems like this might have been a case of her, like, okay, like, I've got this huge story and I need to chop it into pieces type of thing.
All right. I'm going to say something that's probably controversial, but if we're looking for stuff to cut, especially given how they don't follow up on it later, Dobby. I hate Dobby.
What? You hate Dobby?
Dobby is obnoxious. His methods make no sense for what his goal is. And if you want to introduce the house elf thing later in that whole subplot that happens in Chastity, help me out here. I know it's like 4, 5, or 6. It makes sense to introduce the mistreatment of house elves now, but otherwise, like, he doesn't do anything so critical in this that it couldn't have been told another way. And especially because he's here in this one and he's just kind of gone for a while until it's convenient to bring him back so he can die. Like, he's just obnoxious.
Well, it kind of goes against my point I was making a minute ago, and I'll explain it in a second. But Kale says, Chastity, I've never said this before, but I think we may have to kill AJ.
Dude, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, like I said, and a lot of it just makes no sense. So I'm like, you know what? It's better left out.
Well, the thing with Dobby is that, like, like I say, I wonder if this it didn't start to become a case where she had this, big story and she chopped it into pieces. I think the Dobby part of this book and his inclusion in the rest of the series kind of speaks against that, because, in this one, like, he's introduced, he does his thing, he's freed, whatever. And then you don't really hear much from him at all until way later in the series. And then especially, he's got that huge part to play in Deathly Hallows when, so I think that, goes against my idea of her having a kind of maybe she had like a big story, but then just like tweaked it as it went. Maybe that's just what it was. Like, oh, I think I can bring this back. Did she paint herself into corners? Like, shit, how are they going to get out of this? Oh, I got it. Dobby. We'll bring Dobby back. Like, there's
things. Definitely some of both. Yeah, definitely some of both. You don't get something like the Time Turner that shows up so Hermione can take double classes and then not use it later when you're fighting the most evil wizard in history.
I thought the same thing. Yeah. But I'm going to have to disagree with you. I thought Dobby was great. I think Dobby is like the like the Ewoks. The house elves are like the Ewoks of Harry Potter, and I'm a big fan of Ewoks, man. I thought the Dobby character was cool as hell.
Ron even says it in the book. He's like, man, if Dobby tries to help you anymore, he might kill you.
But I mean, isn't that kind of like, again, I mean, you can't just make it obvious, like, oh, Dobby's going to help him and everything works out A-okay. It's, he's a goofy little house elf. Like, things could go awry.
Well, and here's what's not clear to me. And again, I'm sure I'll be corrected by Chastity, but how does he know all this stuff? He's just a house elf, but he knows about the Chamber of Secrets and the threat that it poses. And I don't think anything had happened with the Chamber of Secrets at that point. So why would Dobby know that Harry Potter was in danger if he went back to the school?
Right.
And also, like, boy, for being a slave in the Malfoy's house, he sure gets around. Like, he knows where Harry Potter lives. He gets to Hogwarts. Like, he travels everywhere. So his magic is pretty damn strong for being enslaved. It's kind of weird.
Well, but I mean, he does a lot more later. Later in the series, he's free, so he can do a lot more. But I mean, remember, they're slaves; they can't do anything. So whereas they may have strong powers, he can't do anything with it because he can't go against his master.
Let's see. So Chastity says, this is just called the Chastity Show. Lives with the Malfoys. Lucius has Riddle's school things. He knows what Riddle did, or at least a little. I'm still not clear on how that comes up to kick off the events of this particular story. Like, why does it happen again now?
I mean, it's a good question. I don't think.
I mean, even okay, maybe we never really know what Dumbledore knows because he's playing his cards close to his chest. But he makes mention that at the end of the book, he's like, it's weird that Voldemort was here the whole time because all my sources say that he's like off in a forest in Romania or something.
Yeah.
So did Dumbledore not know that Voldemort was around? And if so, how did Dobby?
That's a very good question. I will say, like, I agree with Chastity. She said,
Albania.
Dobby lives with the Malfoys, so he might have been hearing some stuff. That would make the most sense to me. So, she says it wasn't Voldemort. It was a Horcrux with Riddle's memory. Yeah, I don't know. I thought, I mean, it seems...
Okay, John Phillips here chiming in. Says it's explained in book 6. Malfoy was so sure Voldemort wasn't coming back and wanted to use the book to discredit Weasley. You're telling me that to make this plot of the second book make sense, you've got to wait 4 more books.
Maybe that's one of those plot things she added that we just talked about.
I think Disgust Metal Joe's got it right. He says Malfoy's a bad guy. Dobby's his house elf. He's here. He hears things. Done.
That really makes the most sense. I mean, when you think about it, it's, Billy Judd says my biggest issue in the Chamber of Secrets is Colin Creevey because he was in the film but never appeared again. Billy, I think that's something that I don't personally have a problem with because I think that's just like Harry's got a stalker, and Harry's got like a super fan. And I think they kind of, I think if you had that going on throughout the, the whole storyline where every book, Harry's got a fan club, you basically already had kind of the Ginny Weasley thing going on. And then, that turns into a whole, love thing or whatever. So yeah, the Colin Creevey thing to me is just, it's a character kind of, again, AJ hit on it earlier, the world building that this one really starts setting up, this is setting up the fact, Colin Creevey sets up the fact that, it really hammers home the fact that Harry Potter is this legend, he's the boy who lived. and his reputation precedes him, even though he really hasn't earned a reputation yet outside of not being killed by Voldemort. And then also people kind of fearing his power. Justin Finch Fletchley, when this whole thing's going down and he uses the parcel tongue and there's attacks, people are looking at him because he's so powerful that he survived Voldemort, and then people kind of turn their backs on him at times to be like, well, like none of us could do this. There's only really one person that we've heard is powerful enough to do this kind of stuff. So yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's good world building that way, but I think the Colin Creevey thing, I think having him in one story is good enough. That's kind of just sets up Harry Potter as a legend, and let's move on in the forthcoming novels. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the award for done dirtiest in this book, though, definitely goes to Hagrid.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Christ, the dude gets sent to Azkaban. And Cornelius Fudge even says, like, yeah, I know you probably didn't do it, but I got to look like I'm doing something, so we're just going to scapegoat you. Like,
yes.
What the hell? That is just brutal.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, we'll apologize if it turns out that it's not you. It's fine. Like, okay, dude. Like, and again, maybe that's world building. I'm assuming that was world building because Cornelius Fudge turns out to suck when shit really starts hitting the fan, but.
Yeah.
Good God. Just awful. Poor Hagrid.
I just, the way that I saw that, I agree with you. The way that I saw
actually got double scapegoated. He got double scapegoated because he didn't even do the stuff back in Voldemort's time.
50 years ago. Yeah.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he got scapegoated there too. Like, Jesus, man.
Yeah. I just kind of thought that, the whole Azkaban thing with Hagrid was kind of a way to show the paranoia of the time, that there's rumblings that Voldemort is gaining power again, and because he supposedly had this connection 50 years ago, it was, oh, we got to get this guy out of here. That's how I kind of saw it. John Phillips says the movie does a lousy explanation with what Malfoy is doing, talking about Lucius here. In the book, there's a Muggle Protection Act that Arthur proposed that Malfoy didn't want passed. See, John, I'm going to chalk that one up personally to something that I didn't think they needed to explain. I think it's something that works well in the book to explain exactly why there's so much, animosity there. But I think in the movie, I think it's good enough because you see the differences. You've already had Draco making fun of Ron's family because they're poor. And then when you see, Lucius for the first time and he runs into Arthur, like, they don't like each other because, the kids don't like each other. So, the parents don't like each other. So the whole Muggle Protection Act thing, I didn't think was like overly necessary. Yeah, I didn't really think that was necessary. Real quick, by the way, Jose Ramirez hit a 3-run home run. Josie took it on a vacation far away. Go Guardians. I'm hoping for him to hit 2 more home runs so he gets to the 40-40 club. Anyway, little Cleveland Guardians update there. So real quick, well, not real quick, but let's get to the meat of the story here. Again, I really like the writing of everything and how it came together, because it was kind of difficult to figure out. There wasn't anything really obvious that you could say, okay, well, I can see where this is going, because you really couldn't, at least to me. And then the way that you've got all these loose ends, like what the hell's going on? And they're picking up little clues here and there, but not really this. And then all of a sudden, like the last, quarter of the book or whatever it is, everything just falls into place. I thought that was kind of cool, because it didn't seem pointless leading up to it. It just kind of seemed hopeless in a way, which I thought was interesting. They're shutting down more and more of the school. Like, you got a curfew now, you got this, that, and the other. And then eventually, like, oh, we got to send the students home. Like, the only thing I will say about it, like, I don't know how you felt, but it seemed kind of weird to me, the whole, this is the end of Hogwarts. The Chamber of Secrets has been open. Part of me is like, look, man, if you know this goddamn place has been around forever, why the hell haven't you excavated the shit out of this place? Because it's not like it wasn't magically protected. They just went down a shitter pipe. Like, what the hell?
Yes, thank you. I had that issue too. I'm like, wait a minute. So this place is so secret that most of the teachers just don't know it exists. And they're like, we've looked for it. We can't find this thing anywhere. It must not exist. And then they're like, well, there's this, picture of a snake on a pipe. Have you looked into that at all?
I think what that was telling us is that people in the wizarding world don't have very good hygiene and almost all of them never wash their hands after they take a dump or something.
That's a good point. I mean, Moaning Myrtle right there likes to hang out in the U joint. So
exactly.
And no one likes a cold ass when they sit on the toilet. So I wouldn't go in there.
There's the proof. Myrtle hangs out in the shitter, and no one notices a snake on the sink or on the spigot or whatever.
You notice how vital bathrooms are to these stories? It was in the first one too with the troll.
Oh my God, that's right.
Why does so much stuff happen in the shitter in this thing? All rooms in Hogwarts and the shitters are where it's going down.
They got people getting crushed while they're chucking a clinker because all the actions that's where it's happening.
Oh my God! Picturing awesome. the big war in Deathly Hallows. It everybody storms the castle, runs over the bridge, and then immediately runs to the shitter so they can start casting spells. The rest of the castle is standing, but all the bathrooms are just leveled.
Yeah, right. To the battlefield. Everybody's just in the crapper. Why don't we use the rest of the school? Just shut up and attack, okay? Come on, Avada Kedavra these assholes. But no, I mean, outside of that whole thing, I love how, the whole thing came together. You had, Hagrid follow the spiders or whatever. And even that really didn't tell you much. You know what I mean? I thought that was a really, really good piece of writing. It was okay, well, they followed the spiders and, basically all it did was almost get him killed. The bewitched Ford saved him, which I thought was pretty cool. But even then you're like, what the hell did we find out? Oh, it's a creature we all hate. Hagrid saved me when I was a baby. Okay, well, what the hell good does that do against the heir of Slytherin?
Right.
And then it all, like I say, it just comes together, and then, and just
Moaning Myrtle, her whole story was okay, it's a ghost, and ghosts happen at Hogwarts. Just thought it was a fun little side character, and comes to be, oh no, her fate is pivotal to explaining all of it.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what I thought was great, because you don't really think about it. It seems like kind of that superfluous character just to add a little more atmosphere to what's going on. And instead, no, that's the key to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. When they visit Hermione, she's got paper in her hand, and they take that. I do have to admit, that one I kind of was okay, well, Madame Pomfrey missed that.
Yeah, I mean, Hermione literally handed them the answer.
Yeah. I mean, what was Madame Pomfrey looking at? There's a piece of paper in her fist. She's not going to look.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, but I mean,
it was cool. It was cool because, in the first book, they made sure that Ron, Hermione, and Harry all had things to do down below to solve all the puzzles. And, that all came together too. Yep. And then in this one, they did a good job instead of making sure that Harry eventually lost all of his allies. Dumbledore gets removed and Hermione gets petrified. And then, Ron is stuck behind some rocks, which is kind of a cop out there, but hey, whatever.
Yeah.
It got him out of the way. So it was just Harry and Voldemort squaring off, which was cool. Or a Tom Riddle, technically. Yeah. That whole thing was a little bit weird too. Okay. Can we agree on that bit? The fact that okay, so it's his diary from before he became Voldemort, but he has knowledge of his future self. So he's kind of it's a time traveling essence of his being or something. I thought that was a bit weird. I thought it would have been enough to just say okay, he was already laying plans and that version of him was frozen in time in this diary. But instead for him to know oh yeah, and I'm the biggest, baddest wizard, and I was just waiting because I heard about this Harry Potter guy. You're living in a diary and now you hear about Harry Potter? What?
Well, I think the explanation there is, I mean, don't forget, it's a Horcrux. It's part of his soul. So I think it's kind of it. I hate to phrase it this way, but it learns. It's part of him. So he's you know, he has split himself into 7 pieces, and so it's not like those pieces aren't learning as he ages, you know, what's going on with him. That's him.
So it's kind of like firing up an old iPhone after so long, and then the iOS update comes in. Like it was Tom Riddle's diary, but then when Voldemort made a Horcrux out of it, he's like, now here's all the shit that's happened since then, by the way.
Yeah, right. Chastity said he has the knowledge from Lucius and Ginny. Ginny has a massive crush on Harry. She wrote about him. Yeah, I could see that.
Again, this is one of those like loose bits of continuity in Harry Potter's world that you just got to go with, like, you know, like the photographs that can move and paintings that can move. Like, are they alive? Are they not? Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So
Chastity said he made the Horcrux at 15. Okay, yeah. See, Chastity, like, I know that you know, Ginny writing in the diary is going to tell a lot and everything, and then you know Lucius had it and everything, but it's, you know, I always thought it was the whole Horcrux thing. So that's, you know, I just figured it's part of his soul. So it's you know, wherever his consciousness is, it's split into 7 pieces. That is him. So of course he would know this stuff. So yeah, that was kind of weird, but it took me like 2 viewings to kind of get it. And I was like, all right, I can see what we're doing here. But you know, I thought it was cool. I mean, it was interesting. And I think it's aided by the fact that you know what happens later. Because in the book, it was kind of like, you know, he kills the basilisk, and then he just kind of is like, I'm going to stab the book. And it was like, yeah, I get it. It's a representation of Tom Riddle. So I just didn't think it was explained very well to say why he was doing it. It just kind of seemed like a desperate act.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, would it suck to say, oh, I figured out that this must be him? Or so is this like the only way to do it as a desperate act? You know, so it isn't cheesy or what? I don't know. But that was kind of like in the book, almost glossed over. It was just kind of, it seemed like it sped up a little too much there.
Yeah, it would have been nice if they had paused just to, like, have something happen to the diary, like have it, I don't know, get grazed or something, and show that like the damage to the diary damaged Tom Riddle. You know, just a little hint to be like, oh, okay, the diary is linked to him.
Yeah,
I get it.
I like, I like that idea of like a, you know, 'tis but a scratch, your covers off. I will say, I think that when I compare the two, I actually think that the movie does a bit better job with that end scene than the book does. Mm-hmm. Again, and it's kind of weird, but like when I was getting to the end of the book, I was, you know, when I went to open it up, I was around that scene, and I was like, man, there's like barely any pages left in here. How are they going to resolve this in like, you know, so few pages? So, yeah, but I mean, I thought it was cool. You know, the whole basilisk idea was interesting. It was, I mean, it made sense. I thought they kind of, it got killed a little too easily in a way, but I liked how they did it. You know, with Fawkes the Phoenix coming down and gouging out his eyes so that, you know, the gaze couldn't kill him. Yeah, Joseph Friend nailed it. I'm invincible. The diary of Tom Riddle always triumphs. How about you? You're a loony. But
yeah, that's one of those other things that the book unfortunately had more time to explain. Like when Harry is in Dumbledore's office and the Sorting Hat is there, like, because in a book you have such a better opportunity to talk about like the inner monologue that characters are going through.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing in the movie that leads up to him asking the Sorting Hat about why didn't you put me in Slytherin? Like that, there was nothing in the movie about that prior to that. He just walks in. I was like, you want to ask me why I put you in Gryffindor, don't you? Like, yeah. Weird that you know that, but okay. Like they had time to harp on it in the book and like explain that like Harry was thinking about that because he spoke parcel tongue and all these other things. Like,
Yeah.
or parcel mouth. Sorry. I thought it was parcel tongue. Is that the name of the language? So if you speak it, you're a parcel mouth. Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's one of the two. Parcel
But-
something. Yeah.
It's definitely parcel mouth is someone who can speak the language of snakes. So I must be thinking of the language itself that's called parcel tongue.
Yeah, parcel tongue's the language of parcel mouth is the
Yeah. But yeah, in the book, he's really thinking about that a while. So then when he sees the Sorting Hat, he's like, well, that's the person to ask. But in the movie, there's nothing about it until he just sees the Sorting Hat. He's like, yeah, let me ask you about this.
Well, but I think that's one of those things that doesn't need to be explained again. You know, because it's really
I think it does because it ties into the ending. It ties into the Sorting Hat coming down and handing him the Sword of Gryffindor.
I don't know. I guess I could see that. But to me, it's one of those things like, I don't think it's necessary because that was an internal struggle that Harry was having. Like, why am I not why can I do all this stuff? Why wasn't I in Slytherin? That's kind of internal. And, the whole Sword of Gryffindor thing can be explained away by simply saying, well, he's a Gryffindor. Here, use the Sword of Gryffindor because you're a Gryffindor. So use it. Like, it's simple enough to just say it that way. I mean, it may be a lot more dumb than it is in the book, but
even the fact that the sword can just like come out of the hat was a weird thing to me. I'm going to go with it. I mean, the Wizarding world has its own rules. Whatever's needed for the story is what happens. But I'm like, wow, I didn't know it's like Kylo Ren and Rey. They could just like teleport objects apparently.
Oh,
so,
see, but that one wasn't explained worth a shit. The one I was thinking of was, I mean, they explained it later in I think it was Deathly Hallows when they're kind of on the run looking for the Horcruxes, and Hermione had that bag with the extension charm on it, where it just looked like a little handbag, but they had a ton of stuff, like basically a TARDIS. It was a Louis Vuitton TARDIS, basically. So, by the way, Chastity Crawley says Riddle mentions that he is linked to the diary, so Harry destroys it. See, Crawley ass. Chastity, I think that was done poorly in both the book and the movie. It just wasn't clear enough that like, okay, well, how are you going to defeat Tom Riddle? It wasn't like, oh, you better destroy this damn book and here's how you destroy it. It just kind of seemed like some haphazard, well, let me fuck around with this solution type of a thing. And it just so happened to work, like, well, that's a once in a lifetime shot. So I just thought they could have done a better job of making it clear that was what he needed to do. So, And she says, okay. So it says he had to have embodied the values of Gryffindor to get the sword. Yeah, but don't all of them? I mean, they're all in Gryffindor house. So I mean, I get what you're saying, Chastity, but it's like, again, you can explain that away really easily in the movie. You know what I mean? Like it's just really, really easy to explain away. Just say, oh, he's a Gryffindor, he can use it. There you go. So I think, I don't think that's hugely important. But yeah, I mean, all in all, dude, I like how the whole thing came together. You see like the water on the floor, and then, Mrs. Norris gets petrified, nearly headless Nick, and then you got Hermione and, Justin and the way they explained it all away, they said, oh, well, if you look, directly into the basilisk's eyes, you die immediately. But then they say, okay, well, Mrs. Norris saw the reflection in the water, so she didn't get a full blast. Colin Creevey was taking pictures in his camera, so he got it through the camera. Hermione was looking around the corner with a mirror or whatever it was, so she didn't look him dead. It was just kind of a reflection. It was really cool how they kind of explained that away. Mm-hmm. And again, I really like the part with Aragog where you think you're about to get your answer and you don't.
Yes.
So
yeah,
I thought
it was cool. Yeah, the whole mystery aspect was very well done. It wasn't the sort of whodunit that you can follow along and try to solve it before they do. I feel like the clues weren't obvious enough to piece it together until the story does it for you. But
yes,
it was still fun to try.
Exactly. No, I mean, you don't really kind of get like your first aha moment, I think, until the whole reveal of the Moaning Myrtle death.
Mhm.
You know, like, oh, this girl died in a bathroom 50 years ago or whatever the hell it was. And you were like, wait a minute. A dead girl in a bathroom. And you're like, holy shit. Like, so that was really, really cool how they did that. And then it explained why the water's always on the floor and all this other stuff. You know, like, I mean, it was cool, man. I loved how it all came together. And, you know, the basilisk, was a cool, you know, enemy. Kind of silly, I guess, in a way. Like I say, I think they kind of killed it a little too easily in the book, but still a pretty cool enemy, you know. And to say that, you know, and to use the fact that, you know, Harry is a parcel mouth as part of it to, you know, get for him to, you know, be able to understand the language and all that kind of stuff, and tie into Slytherin was cool. So yeah, I thought it was really, really good writing.
And the petrification thing I think was cool too, because it ties back into Greek mythology with Medusa, right?
Yes.
Like that was the only way you could look upon Medusa was using a mirror. You know, if you look directly at her, you're done for, that kind of a thing. So I thought that was cool to like tie into, you know, you got snakes and petrification and all that. So it gave it, in a dumb way, it gave it like a grander sense that it tied into this mythology of real life, you know?
Yeah. So
yeah,
Chastity,
overall, I thought it was. Oh, sorry. What did Chastity say?
Go ahead. Yeah. I was just going to say, she said, but she's talking about the sword of Gryffindor. But why didn't Ron get it, or Hermione, or Dean, or Seamus? They are Gryffindors because they weren't down in the chamber.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Chastity, is that, you know, it's easy. That's just something easy to explain away. In the book, it makes sense because it's like, you know, he's, you know, they can go into it much more deeply, you know, but in the movie to just say, well, it's a sort of Gryffindor. He's a Gryffindor, so he can use it. Like, that's, you know.
Listen, strange hats lying in offices distributing swords is no means of a system of government.
So we just need to do a drunken episode and just get drunk and watch freaking Holy Grail.
This is, you know, I was thinking about this with Moaning Myrtle. It's a good thing that she wasn't taking a dump when she was killed, because, you know, nearly headless Nick is stuck there, you know, with almost a beheaded head, because that's how he died. So like, if her like, if her pants were around her ankles or something, like if she was on the shitter when she died, would she just be floating around as a ghost, like with her ass hanging out and underwear around her ankles, like all the time?
Half a loaf. This is so gross. The
Like,
views of the
would she be forever crowning? Like,
the views of the Nerf Herder Council do not necessarily reflect those of the Virtual Cantina Network.
so we've got Bergen and Borks, and we've got crowning Myrtle.
It's Moaning Myrtle because she died, but there's actually a second ghost that doesn't ever come out, and she was right in the middle, and it was grunting Gertrude. Basilisk. So they go in the bathroom and they're I died, and then I'm dead. I'm dead. Who the hell is that, Moaning Myrtle? Oh, that's groaning Gertrude. Or grunting Gertrude.
Maybe there's a third one who just passed out on the shitter and then got killed. She'd be Syncope Sydney.
She had nothing to do with the basilisk. She just had an aneurysm taking a dump. No basilisk for me. Just a very unfortunate accident. Right around the time of Moaning Myrtle and grunting Gertrude. I knew it. I knew Joe's gonna bring it up. Hey Jay, we need another shirt.
Sure, why not? This is a pretty crowded bathroom, by the way. I can see why no one uses it.
It's just everybody's dead from like 8 people died at the same time from the basilisk. All in the middle, at some stage of it's like spitting mud. I'm not even going to do it.
Secrets. No one talks about that.
Exactly. Oh my God, that's so bad. Oh my God. Okay. So yeah, so Chastity was answering a question because Billy actually asked this question, and I forgot the answer. So Billy Judd asks, did Penelope have something that made the basilisk turn her petrified? Because Hermione had the mirror. I thought they kind of both looked in the mirror, and
water on the floor.
Not with Penelope, because she was with she got petrified the same time as Hermione did.
Yeah. Okay. Who got it from the water reflection? Was that Mrs. Norris?
Mrs. Norris did, yeah.
Okay.
John Phillips. I guess it's a good thing it didn't come up in the same toilet that Myrtle was in. Yeah, what?
That was the alternate take on the stories that the basilisk was one of the ghosts because it came up the wrong pipe. Okay.
Oh my God.
You can always tell when we're past the hour mark because this is where the show goes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. All right. So, well, let's give our final thoughts here. So, yeah, I posed the question in the show description on StreamYard, and on YouTube and stuff. I said, is it the worst of the series, or is it, a worthy follow up to what has become a classic? And, I think, I think it's a worthy follow up personally. I don't think it's as strong as, Sorcerer's Stone, but, I still think it's a great story. I love the writing of it. I love how it comes together because it kind of, as you're kind of going through it, like nothing really happens. They never really seem to gain ground on the mystery, and then all of a sudden, like I say, last quarter of the book, everything just ties together beautifully. Like, oh, I get it. So I really like that aspect of it. And as you said, I think it was a very, very good point you made early in the show, saying that it does an excellent job of world building. There's a lot of stuff they set up here that really applies to everything that comes after it. There's not a lot of one-off stuff in here. It's very overarching in a lot of ways. So I thought it did a good job there too. And there are some glaring differences between the movie and the book, but I don't think there's a ton that, if I would say there's not many that kind of take away from the original story of the novel. So I think the movie is very faithful to the novel. And I would say that about almost all the movies. I just have, just a couple things here and there. So what do you think?
I think I got to break it down in a couple different ways. I think it makes a much better book than it does a movie, because of all the things we mentioned, all the subtext that had to be left out due to the runtime. Okay. And also visually, I think when you say this is the episode 2, the Attack of the Clones of the Harry Potter saga, I think that applies to the visuals as well. Okay. This thing really suffers from people in a room on a green screen. Like there is so much stuff. The Quidditch still looks like shit. They never really got Quidditch down in a believable manner. I guess that's just the effects of the time to an extent, but and also the fact they had a lot of child actors. But altogether, it just didn't visually. It didn't grab me. So as a movie, I think it definitely could be one of the worst. But as a story, it's definitely not in the bottom. I think this thing gets a lot more hatred than it deserves.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Again, when I first read it and first watched the movie, it was kind of almost throwaway to me. I was like, yeah, this is definitely at the bottom for me. And while it may still be at the bottom for me, it's definitely way better than I thought. And it's on par with, the rest of them. Whereas previously it really wasn't for me. So, yeah, I think it's good. Before we jump out of here, Chastity has something she wants to bring up real quick. She says, I have something about the diary to randomly make you think about. She says, only Voldemort and his followers called him the Dark Lord. Her poem calls Voldemort her poem calls Voldemort the Dark Lord. Did Riddle help her write her love poem? There we go. Okay. When Ginny wrote her poem for Harry, did she ask Riddle for help? Only Voldemort and his followers called him the Dark Lord. Her poem calls Voldemort the Dark Lord. Did Riddle help her write it? Yeah, could be. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, I missed that little bit of language. That would make sense. Yeah.
Very cool. Good
point. I mean,
Chastity.
he was basically infecting her at that point. She had blackout periods. So he might have been the one who actually wrote the entire poem while she was under his sway.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. Good stuff, AJ. Sorry I'm making you read, but, it's what we got to do. It's what we got to do. So we are going to be right back here. What is the date going to be? 4th, 2nd. It'll be Wednesday, 9th. October 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it is going to officially be scary season. It kind of is now, but, October. So we are going to do a pair of Halloween-themed shows. We like to do those every year. We don't know what they're going to be yet, but we will figure it out. We'll be back here in 2 weeks. Chastity, we are definitely having you on when we do one of our future Harry Potter episodes, so we'll definitely get that scheduled with you. AJ, why don't you tell people about our Patreon?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, actually, because I do also have some ideas for the month of October and some things that we might do. I know our Loki watch-along got some good numbers and views on YouTube here. We might do some more with some horror movie watch-alongs. So stay tuned on Patreon. That's where the announcements about those are going to be posted first. So if you go to patreon.com/NHC podcast, that's where the latest information about the show will be posted. We do have 2 paid tiers and also free as well. So if you want to just subscribe to the podcast through Patreon like you do all your other podcasts, you can do that as well for no money whatsoever. But if you toss us just $1 a month, you'll get those podcasts 2 days earlier. So we do our live stream on Wednesdays. We release the audio on Sundays. If you want to get that on Fridays instead, say you missed the show or whatever, then $1 a month will get you access to that. And at the $3 tier, we will be happy to give you a shout out when you sign up and credit you for being, rich. So that's nice. We don't have really a name for the $3 tier, but yeah, you get all the additional perks and stuff, more input on the show. You can give us topic ideas and things like that as well. So plenty of perks for the $3 level. And that's our Patreon. So definitely stay tuned to that. Even at the free level, sign up. It costs you nothing. And that's where you'll find out about what we're doing for October, Scary Month.
Yep, definitely. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys tuning in to another episode. Mimar, good to see you. She finally comes in at the end. Just take my money, $3. There we go. Mimar's going to subscribe. All right.
Nice.
So thanks to all you guys in the chat. Obviously, Chastity Crawley, our resident Harry Potter expert, for always setting us straight. So that's awesome. Billy Judd, thanks for tuning in. Great to see you. Hope you had a good time. Our good friend John Phillips, of course. We always have Kale McLeish and Discuss Metal Joe. Thank you guys for tuning in. As I said, guys, we are going to be right back here on Wednesday, October 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the first of our 2 Halloween episodes. And we've done some really cool stuff with that in the past. I know last year we reviewed the Hellraiser remake. I'm a huge Hellraiser fan, so who knows, maybe that'll come up at some point in the comments somewhere. We can't do an episode because we already talked about it last year, but that's the sort of thing that we like to do. So we'll be doing that. 2 Halloween episodes in the month of October. So we appreciate you guys. As always, we are brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. Please remember to click the like button, click the subscribe button, and hit that Jesus, I am so tired. Smash that notification bell so that you're notified every time we go live. If you would like to get customizable Nerf Herder Council swag, just go to shop.nerfherdercouncil.com. And if you would like to get virtual Cantina Network swag, just go to tpublic.com/user/virtual-cantina. And one quick recommendation before we sign off here. I'm in the middle of watching an awesome documentary on Amazon Prime. It's a 4-parter. Each episode is like an hour to an hour and a half long, and it's about the making of RoboCop. And RoboCop kicks all kinds of ass, and so does this documentary. So I would highly recommend that.
4-parter.
Yes, it's awesome. It's really, really good. So highly recommended. So anyways, guys, we'll see you on Wednesday, October 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here at all these locations. Until then, I'm your host, JT. He is AJ.
At Drake Adams 579.
And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bucket of bolts is never gonna get us past that blockade.
This bucket's got a few surprises left in her. Plus, me and Chewie are on it. Ain't that right, Chewie?
Hell yeah, you my nerf herder.
You my nerf herder.